If a relationship is struggling, there is one piece of advice you are almost guaranteed to hear. Figure out your love languages. For 30 years, it has been the default, universally accepted tool millions of couples have used to try and salvage a fading connection, and it is easy to see the appeal. Identifying whether you prefer quality time or acts of service finally gave people a distinct vocabulary to express what they needed to feel seen and valued by their partner. Gary Chapman published the framework in 1992. He was a Baptist minister, and his book was built entirely on clinical observation and personal conviction. It was never based on controlled psychological studies. So psychology researchers at the University of Toronto recently put the concept to a rigorous test, and the framework broke down. The most influential relationship advice of the modern era is an unproven hypothesis that fails under actual scientific scrutiny. The Toronto researchers dismantled all three of Chapman's core premises: the idea that every person has one primary language, that exactly 5 exist, and that matching those languages improves relationship quality. In fact, 3 separate studies cited by UC Berkeley researchers showed that couples with perfectly matched love languages reported no higher satisfaction than couples who were entirely mismatched. Identifying a primary language creates a counterproductive habit. It establishes a subconscious, highly static mental contract between you and your partner. You know they need words of affirmation, and they know you need acts of service. Genuine, spontaneous attentiveness gets replaced by a transactional checklist, and almost inevitably, you start keeping score of who did what. Love is a living, context-sensitive behavior. Forcing it into a fixed category rarely fosters growth. Instead, it tends to trap couples in a cycle of resentment. If rigid categories do not keep couples together, we need to look at what peer-reviewed relationship science says actually predicts lasting connection. The first major predictor is responsive caregiving. This is the specific capacity to notice when your partner needs something, and then meet that exact need in that specific moment. What your partner needs from you on a Tuesday when they are completely exhausted is vastly different from what a scheduled active service might look like on a Sunday afternoon. Because human needs fluctuate wildly depending on the context of the day, true responsiveness has to be fluid. A static checklist is practically useless in real time. The second scientific predictor of longevity is a concept called the self-expansion model. Humans have a basic psychological drive to expand their identity. In a romantic partnership, this happens when you incorporate your partner's unique skills, perspectives, and worldviews into your own sense of self. This relies on an expansive, mutual growth mindset. The old love language framework is a highly narrow lens that focuses almost entirely on what you passively receive from the other person. Researchers have found that this sense of mutual growth predicts relationship success far more reliably than whether or not a partner speaks an assigned language. The final predictor shifts away from grand gestures entirely, focusing squarely on the microscopic, everyday interactions between you and your partner. Researcher John Gottman refers to these interactions as bids for connection. These bids are micro-moments of emotional attunement: a passing comment, a shared glance, a quick text, tiny daily actions that either quietly build or subtly erode the foundation of a relationship over time. True intimacy is built through a collection of these dynamic, ongoing behavioral mechanics. Rigid identity labels simply cannot account for how deeply intertwined those interactions actually are. This doesn't mean you should abandon the idea that different people feel loved in different ways. That part of the framework is true, and it is absolutely worth keeping. What you have to throw out is the rigidity. Let go of the primary labels, the illusion of matching categories, and the mental scorecard. You replace that scorecard with continuous, genuine curiosity. Stop asking, "What is your love language?" and start asking contextual questions, like, "What did I do that made you feel most seen this week?" The person sitting across from you today is not the exact same person they were 3 years ago. Because they are constantly evolving, your understanding of them has to be updated constantly. A lasting connection requires diverse, flexible actions. It demands a willingness to keep learning who your partner is becoming, because people change, and the framework for loving them has to change too.